What if I told you that the story of America's beginnings is not what you learned in school? Behind the neat tales of pilgrims and founding fathers lies a world of forgotten struggles, hidden betrayals, and lives erased from the history books. From starving settlers who turned to desperate measures, to enslaved people whose courage shaped the colonies, to women who defied rules in silence, colonial America was not just a land of opportunity. It was a battlefield of survival. Tonight, we step into the shadows of the 17th and 18th centuries to uncover the untold stories of colonial America. The year was 1607 when English settlers arrived in Jamestown, Virginia. They dreamed of wealth, freedom, and a fresh start in the New World. But the land they entered was already home to thriving indigenous nations, who watched with wary eyes as strangers planted their flags. Life in the colonies was far from the romantic image painted in textbooks. Settlers battled disease, hunger, and harsh winters. Many perished before ever seeing their dreams realized. The early years were a constant gamble between survival and despair. And yet, the colonies grew. Waves of new arrivals poured in from Europe, Puritans seeking religious refuge, farmers chasing fertile soil, and merchants hoping to carve out fortune. But with expansion came conflict. Indigenous lands were seized, alliances shattered, and wars ignited. Hidden in these struggles were stories rarely told. Stories of enslaved Africans whose forced labor built much of the colony's wealth. Stories of women who risked their lives to challenge laws and expectations. Stories of forgotten rebellions that shook the foundations of colonial society. Colonial America was not a simple story of progress. It was a mosaic of voices, each fighting for survival, freedom, or power. And within those voices are secrets that still echo through America's history today. In Jamestown's early days, hunger gnawed at the settlers so fiercely that desperate men resorted to cannibalism. Archaeologists unearthed evidence in the remains of a young girl, confirming that survival sometimes demanded the unthinkable. These are not the stories we celebrate, but they reveal the brutal reality of life in a colony on the edge. Meanwhile, indigenous nations such as the Powhatan Confederacy fought to protect their homelands. Their diplomacy, battles, and betrayals shaped the future of the colonies. Yet their stories were often silenced, buried beneath European accounts. What no one realized at the time was that the survival of the English settlement owed as much to indigenous aid as to European determination. But danger was always closing in. As the colonies expanded, so too did tensions. Bacon's rebellion in 1676, an armed uprising by poor farmers, indentured servants, and enslaved people, shook Virginia to its core. It was a warning that inequality and unrest simmered beneath the surface of colonial life. And while the rebellion was crushed, its impact endured. The ruling elite began to rely more heavily on enslaved African labor, fearing alliances between poor whites and black workers. This shift would define the economy and society of colonial America for centuries. In New England, Puritans preached strict religious devotion, but hidden beneath their sermons were stories of fear and suspicion. The infamous Salem Witch Trials exposed a society where paranoia ruled and innocent lives were destroyed. Women who spoke too loudly or defied too boldly risked being branded as witches. Everywhere in the colonies, untold voices echoed. Enslaved Africans passed down stories of resilience through song and faith. Women, often denied education, wrote secret letters and diaries preserving their struggles. Indigenous peoples resisted, adapted, and endured, even as they were pushed from their lands. Colonial America was not just a tale of freedom seekers. It was a crucible of conflict, courage, and survival. By the mid-18th century, the colonies had grown restless. Taxes, restrictions, and oppression from the British Crown set the stage for revolution. But beneath the political speeches and declarations, the true heartbeat of rebellion lay with ordinary people. Farmers, merchants, enslaved men and women, indigenous allies and enemies, all entangled in a web of resistance and survival. The turning point came when everyday colonists realized they were not simply settlers on foreign soil. They were the architects of a new society. The price of survival had been blood, betrayal, and untold sacrifice. Now, that legacy erupted into open defiance. From whispered rebellions to loud battles, the climax of colonial America was not just independence, it was the eruption of centuries of hidden struggles finally breaking into the light. Today, the story of colonial America is often polished into tales of freedom and founding fathers. But the untold stories of indigenous nations displaced, enslaved Africans resisting, women defying, and poor farmers rising reveal a far more complex truth. The colonies were not built on freedom alone. They were built on survival against famine, rebellion against injustice, and resilience in the face of oppression. These hidden voices shaped the foundation of a nation long before its declaration of independence. The impact of colonial America lingers still in questions of freedom, equality, and justice. The forgotten struggles remind us that history is never a single story. It is many, layered and unfinished. And so we uncover these voices, not to rewrite history, but to complete it. Like, share, and subscribe for more forgotten stories, because history hides truths we can no longer ignore.